All right, so today I'm going to cover inside of live coding MLOps. I'm going to dive into Vertex AI, which is the MLOps platform from Google, and do a live demo and just dive into it. So I'm going to get right into it, and I'm going to dive into Vertex AI. So to start with here, one of the cool things about Vertex AI is that there's a lot of great documentation. You can see here that it does a lot of things in one interface. And so Google has done a lot of changes to their machine learning offerings. And this has happened very recently where, there was an AutoML tool, there's the model hosting tool, all these things. Now they're all in this one thing called Vertex AI. And it has AutoML, it has pre-trained APIs, it has end-to-end integration, it supports TensorFlow, PyTorch, scikit-learn. So one of the best ways to actually play around with something like Vertex AI is to use something called Cloud Skills Boost. It used to be called Quick Labs. So I'm going to go through this one right here, which is building and deploying machine learning solutions with a Vertex AI Challenge Lab. So this says an hour and 45, but I'm going to try to go through this in a half an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this thing. And what we'll want to do is once this thing is launched, I'm going to open this up in a new tab here, and I'm going to use this username, and I'm going to use this password to actually log in. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and do this. And there we go. We're all set. Now that I've been able to log into this, I can actually scroll down and take a look at some of the other things here. And so we can actually go through this and look at this console in a little bit more detail. So the challenge scenario here, this is probably a better view, shows us that this is the actual architecture of the actual challenge here. And so you can see that there's a model in the Vertex notebook. There's a cloud build system. There's also the artifact registry, the Vertex pipeline as well. And then there's actually a prediction system right here. So in order to get this thing cooking, I can actually move this here and get right into it. In fact, there we go. That works. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Vertex AI, and I'm going to create a new notebook instance. I'm going to select TensorFlow 2.6. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go to Vertex AI. Where's Vertex AI? Here we go. And we're going to go to the dashboard first. And we're going to go to Workbench User Managed Notebooks. Workbench. And then we'll go to User Managed Notebooks. Okay. And we're going to create TensorFlow 2.6 without GPUs. So create notebook. And what do we want to call this thing? We'll call this thing Vertex AI Challenge. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And we'll leave this. I'm assuming we're going to do 2.6. And I don't know if it has 2.6 with LTS. It looks like this is the one we want. Wow, that's an expensive notebook here. And we'll close this Vertex AI. Vertex AI Challenge, leave the default configuration. Okay, let's try it. Do we want to, no GPU, we want to keep that, keep everything the same, create. Okay, let's double check that that's working. Vertex AI Challenge. Well, I did do that. I guess it's got to take a second for this thing to actually wake up. So we got this Vertex AI challenge here, and I always screw this part up. This is kind of annoying how this takes up some real estate, but I guess it's not that bad. Okay, so once we've done that, then we're going to go into the terminal, the notebook, and we're going to clone some code, and then we'll have to actually install some packages as well. So this should take a second here. Hopefully this launches pretty quickly. Let's see here. Last modified, TensorFlow 2.6, Vertex AI challenge. We can see it's got a pretty big boot disk. Health monitoring, logs. We see it's installing the GPU driver, even though we're not using GPU. And here's the details of it. So this might take a little bit of time for this thing to launch. User managed notebook. I guess there's also managed notebooks. What's this? Create notebook. Interesting. Oh, it's like a Jupyter Lab kind of thing. Okay. But we'll stay with this one. User managed notebooks. Okay, we'll wait for this thing to launch. The logs are probably the best way to see what's going on here. If I click on it, we can see that it's queuing up. Verifying transaction. Yeah, one thing cloud vendors do have issues with is how long it takes to launch machines, and just it does seem like they could figure out a quicker way to launch machines, but we'll keep waiting here. Verifying done. So what's next? So if I go to this, check my progress, what does it say now? Oh, there we go. So it looks like we're ready to go. So how do I launch this thing though? I don't see a an open tab here yet. Calm displays. We can make this a little bit bigger potentially. Oh, I see. Unable to start the notebook. That's the key issue. If I do share, and I guess what I could do is I could actually make this a little bit bigger like this, and this will, I think, make it a little bit easier to demo. There we go. So once this thing is ready to go, I should be able to start the notebook. So I guess it's installing the NVIDIA driver, which again is weird because I'm not using a GPU. So why are you installing things I don't need? But I guess it's maybe they're assuming the default here is a lot of people are using they're going to be using GPUs. View VM details. So we can also look at the VM here, and we see it's running, which is interesting. So I don't know why I can't, if it says it's running, why can I not start it? I guess it really does take a long time to um, to get this thing running. No. This info panel is also not awesome because it would be nice to get rid of it. Right, if I hide info panel, there you go. I don't want that. So no wonder why the lab takes an hour and 35 minutes. Just launching the VM takes maybe 5 minutes. So what are we doing here? Swapping binaries. I guess they're removing the GPU package. Looking like there's some Jupyter Lab stuff happening. Proxy registration. Okay, so starting Jupyter Notebook service, that's promising. Running some Docker things, getting some packages. Okay. Preparing to unpack the container. Okay. It's definitely a big journey here to get this notebook running. Preparing the cloud SDKs. This looks, there we go. Finally. Okay. We got Jupyter Lab cooking here. And I guess the first thing that we want to do is I need to open up a terminal, and I'm going to clone some code. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install the packages after it's cloned it. So this is just typical, Jupyter Lab stuff here. Boy, that's a big repo. It's an amazing amount of code that's being pulled down. It's almost a gig of data. Okay, so now I'm going to do. I want to make sure that I'm going into the training quests, Vertex AI, Vertex Challenge Lab. Oh, bummer! There we go. It froze up on me for a second. Okay, Vertex AI, and then Vertex Challenge Lab. There you go. So now that we're in here, there's a requirements file. We can look at it. Right, so it's going to install Google Cloud, TensorFlow, things like that. I'm just going to do a pip install -u -r requirements. Okay. And then we want to look inside of this directory here for quests. And we want to go into Vertex AI here. And we want to go into Vertex Challenge Lab. Here we go. And we want to open up the Challenge Lab once this thing's finished. Wow. Did it say it's installing Kubernetes, which seems interesting to have to run things, but okay. All right. So now we got this Challenge Lab. I'm going to open up the notebook, and the setup we're going to define a project ID, GCS bucket, and user variables. Okay, so here's again the thing that we're going to be building and defining the constants, create a bucket. Now, what's interesting, retrieve and set project ID. So the project ID, I guess we would have to go back here and look at this project ID here. So let's throw that in there. Create a globally unique bucket. I mean, sure. I mean, is there a bucket for us already though? Let's see here. If I go to storage here, cloud storage, is there a bucket for me? Okay, there is a globally unique bucket. So I'll use that bucket. Not totally explained, but I know enough Google that I could figure that out. And we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. Wait, does not support file. Did you mean GS? Wow. GS. Already exists. Try another name. Sure. Okay. And then it says all the rest of the code has been provided for you. And so they want us to open it up. Okay. So we're going to build and train a model locally. So there's a to-do section. So I guess the first thing is here's our Vertex AI API here. And then we're going to initialize the project SDK, which is interesting. So let's see, does that work? Good. So we're gonna knit it. Vertex AI, there's project ID region. We got all that stuff. Now build and train the model locally. And this is going to extend the TensorFlow BERT text classification tutorial. And so this is going to use the large movie review data set, which is 50,000 movie reviews. They're split into 25 review and testing. And so here's the data set. Let's pull that down. So here's some helper function that will go ahead and pull down the data for us. So that was fast. Here's a dictionary that we use for the data pipeline and model training hyperparameters, which is kind of neat. So these are still running whenever you see that. Okay, so those are done. This is going to pre-process the data sets. It's going to do some things to it. And notice it's using Keras pre-processing library. And then we're going to use TF data auto tune, which I'm assuming is some kind of pre-processing step in TensorFlow. There we go. So this just shows the text and what it looks like. I've seen this data set before. So we're going to choose a pre-trained BERT model to fine tune. So the idea with bidirectional encoder BERT is that it's been pre-trained on 3 billion words, right? So you're not going to probably do that yourself. And so instead, you can use it to essentially bootstrap what you're doing. So for the initial learning rate, we're going to use the same BERT pre-training. So let's go ahead and do that. 3 epochs. This is the learning rate. There's a dropout rate set. And then this is the initial create optimizer. And now we're going to build and compile the sentiment classifier. And this is just using, Keras library here. Let's go ahead and build that. Uh-oh, preprocessor not defined. What am I missing here? Preprocessor not defined. Let's run that again. Let's run this again. The layer preprocessing to add a trainable, name the layer bird encoder and store it. Oh, so maybe I'm missing the first section. Is there a to do? Oh, here we go. I'm missing to do. So add a using the name the layer for BERT text preprocessing in H parameters dictionary. Where was that? H parameter. Oh, in here. So we need to do. Well, I wish they gave you like. Let's add a hub keras layer for BERT text preprocessing. Name the layer preprocessing. BERT encoder. I mean, it name the layer. So preprocessing and BERT encoder. It would be nice if they showed an example. Is there a README that tells us more? Okay, here's the example. Yeah, this is a little bit obscure here because the conceptually I understand what they're asking. They want to call pre-processing, and then we want to call this one add a hub keras layer for birch. I mean, is this what you mean? Like this? Let's try. And then let's do one more, which is the add the layer bird encoder and name the layer bird encoder, add a trainable, and name the layer bird and store in the variable encoder. Variable encoder. Just add a trainable keras layer using HBREFs. Dictionary. So encoder, bird encoder. And then this one. I don't know. It would be nice to look at an example. I'm not thinking I'm getting this right. So name preprocessor is not defined. Preprocessor. Yeah, I really don't. I would have to look at an example here. So it's a bummer that they don't give me hint. The arguments will be the same as the custom container training. Build and submit your job. So build it. But they really don't give you to add a section to add a hub for BERT texts. Hub to add a hub. Keras layer. So this would be a good thing to look at is this H params example, maybe. This is how I could look at it. Okay, let's look at some H params. Keras, yeah, how do you define that? Yeah, I don't know how to define that layer. It looks like, I mean, in code, you would do this, but what do you do in the dictionary? That's the question. It's hard to know. Yeah, this lab has gotten me stuck. Well, that maybe that's a good spot actually to take a break and say, okay, well, I tried I tried this. What I'm stuck on is I need to figure out what is the correct model training hyperparameters. Now, would have been nice if they had something like that. I mean, I could take a few more minutes here and see if I can look at the original thing and see if they have an example. So here's this. We have the training. Are there some hyperparameters here? Toggle code. Okay. Pre-processing model. Okay. Using the BERT model. Okay. Defining a model. Encoder. Yeah, not a great lab here because unfortunately they don't tell you what's supposed to be in that dictionary, and so this does make things a little bit tricky to play around with. So I got stuck, and I need to figure out what the hyperparameters would be. It's not clear to me if you would how you would add another layer inside of the H params dictionary. But once I figure that out, I should be able to get this thing to run. So that was kind of a fun experiment, and it's actually nice to actually to not have things work. I guess would it be this? Would it be this thing? That's interesting. So classifier. Oh, does this make sense? Name the layer pre-processing. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe the layer pre-processing dot add a hub dot keras layer. Is there an example? Hub dot keras layer. There's tf dot keras layer. But what is a hub layer? That's the question that's interesting to figure out. Add a terminal hub dot keras layer. I mean, I guess I could look if I made another cell here and I said tf dot keras dot, it doesn't let me tf dot keras layer dot, if I say tab, does it show me saying keras a hub? I don't see the hub. tf.keras. Hub. What about hub.keras? Where's hub? Yeah, this is very difficult to follow lab, unfortunately, which is kind of fun because it means I have to hustle a little bit to get this working, and might as well try it next week. All right. Well, it's not always going to work out when you do live coding. So thanks again for whoever showed up, and I'll see you next week.